Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.
Good evening and welcome to the Community Policing Advisory Review Board meeting for Thursday, November 17th. My name is Kelly Carroll. I have the pleasure of being the board chair and calling this meeting to order. First on the evening's agenda, I'm going to ask each of the members of Cparb to introduce themselves with a brief paragraph of who they are and why they're here. So I'm going to start over here with Scott.
Awesome. So Scott Richmond, I've been a resident of Bennington for quite a number of years. I came back here for college and never left. Basically, I read what the Cparb was going to be doing in the community and felt that I had something to offer the board with my background and just to try to help make the community a better place for all the different communities within our community.
Okay. I'm Jeff Vickers, originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. When I was younger, moved to Colorado, where I met my wife, and the place I was working at out there ended up getting bought out and closed down, so my old boss was here in Bennington, asked if I'd be interested in moving to Vermont. I said I'd never been there, I'd love to see it, and it's been almost 18 years I've been here. When I first moved, my wife and kids were still out in Colorado for about 7 months, and I was looking for something to do, so I joined the local volunteer fire department, and have enjoyed that immensely since I've been here. And then finding out that this board was going to exist, I kind of enjoyed that community service aspect of the fire department and thought that this would also be a similar way to give some of my time to the community, hopefully in a positive way, and that there are things that I could do and help with that might make things better. So that's it.
I wrote out a little something. So my name is Will Greer. I've always had a Vermont connection, but I'm originally from Texas. I'm a student at Bennington College, majoring in public administration and criminal justice. It's always been my passion in life to be involved in community, and to have found and accepting an appreciative community is something that I care deeply about. I want to participate in Cparb because I feel that I have much to offer the board, but also to learn from the board so that we can improve the quality of police services in Bennington. Through our given authority, I hope to accomplish this and all other unsaid goals within this parameter.
And Will is our vice chair.
Oh yeah, I should have mentioned that. Yeah, thanks.
I'm going to go to Marsh.
Okay, and I'm the secretary, or the recorder, I guess is my formal title. I grew up in Bennington 73 years ago, and on my retirement I came back to this area, which I really love, and the people too. And I'm deeply concerned about justice. And when I stood in the room while our state attorney general explained that our judicial system could do nothing to give justice to our representative Kaya Morris, who was terribly mistreated by a white supremacist, I was very troubled. I've been working on the task force that created Cparb, and I came to know and appreciate and respect some excellent police officers in Bennington. And hear stories from people who have been tremendously blessed and others who reported very disturbing experiences. And during that time in working on police policies, I became very excited about collaborative community policing, which is one of the central models we're working toward. I hope we can bring more justice, better communication, and wonderful collaboration among all facets of our community, and that you will join us in making that happen. And
wow, that's hard to follow. My name's Robert Ebert. My wife and I moved here to Bennington back in 2009 after I retired from the Austin, Texas Fire Department. One of the things that attracted us to a community like Bennington was that the town had its own full-time professional police department. I believe a police department is a part of a town's infrastructure, like streets and bridges and water and wastewater and parks and all of that. But because we invest our police departments with really an enormous amount of power to affect our lives, I've always thought that every police department should enjoy the benefits of having civilian, I don't know if oversight is the right word, but I'll just say civilian oversight. Over the past couple of years, Bennington Police Department, rightly or wrongly, has been subject to, I think, unprecedented scrutiny. One outcome of that scrutiny was a recommendation that a board like this be created. When it was, it intrigued me. I don't know that I offer any special skills or abilities other than a desire to participate in this and hopefully to help Bennington Police Department be as effective in the community as possible.
Pretty good job.
Was that all right?
That was excellent.
And my name is Kelly Carroll, and I am the chair of Cparb. I have been a resident of Bennington since 1969, except for a couple of years after college. I've raised my family here, and after my daughter was murdered, I became involved in local advocating for what's going on in our community. I have a healthcare background in hospitals. We're very regulated. We monitor all of our processes. We review all of our policies and procedures on an annual basis. We update them as needed if there's an incident or something that comes that happens in the meantime. We're constantly striving for continuous improvement, quality assurance, performance improvement, and always striving to do better. And when I heard about Cparb and how they will be looking at policies and procedures and training and reviewing those and making recommendations on training, I thought that I might be a good fit. I've worked for my company for 20 years. I do healthcare, but I'm primarily in a training role. And I thought that I might be able to use some of my skills there to help with bridging the gap and getting some of the communication flow going in both directions. And that's why I wanted to participate in Cparb and make Bennington all that it can be. I think that we do have a very professional police department. I have a lot of respect for the officers and the leadership. I think we can all do better. I think that from my personal experience, they've shown that they have a desire to partner and collaborate with us and work with us. And I look forward to working with them and trying to see what we can do to analyze the data and make them stronger in our community, stronger, and give voices to people that don't necessarily have them. Not to babble on, but my company has done a lot of education with us on appreciating differences, diversity, equity, inclusion, and that's been consistent since day one for me for 20 years with them. And one thing that they try to instill in us is to be the difference. So I hope to be the difference, and I'm very fortunate to work with some of the fantastic people that are sitting up here with me. So thank you for that. I'd also like to thank our liaison from the Select Board, Tom Haley, our BPD Chief of Police, Paul Doucette, and Lieutenant Cam Grandy. And I'd also like to thank Cat TV and specifically Jim Vyers for being here to cover this for us. And I do want to make sure that everyone from the public knows that we have a sign-in sheet up here. If anyone would like to participate in public comment, we do ask that you print. And when it comes time to speak, we're going to ask that you can just come up here so that Jim can catch everything on camera and on the microphone. So thank you. I do have one adjustment to the agenda. And that is, we will look at rescheduling Jonah. He is ill and unable to be with us this evening. So I'm hoping to get a motion to adjust.
So move.
Second.
Okay. So the motion to adjust the agenda with removing Jonah and asking him to come next month is on the table. Is there any discussion? No. Can I get a vote? Everyone in favor that says aye?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous, so moved, thank you. Next on our agenda is the town vision statement, and everyone should have that in their packet. There are copies of it over there. Marsh had made a nice suggestion that it would be good if we all read this together. So if everyone can get that out
Like in unison?
in unison.
I'll look on with you, because
In the spirit of time savings and not having, and I do have them on the other table if we need more. So, the vision statement for the town of Bennington. Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, and resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
Here, here.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
Consent of agenda, what is
I
that?
guess the consent to approve the
Of
agenda
this
that we have
agenda?
for tonight?
Yeah,
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, so, do we need to vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, so can I, is there any, the motion is on with the first by Will and a second by Jeff to approve the consent of the agenda. Is there any discussion? Okay. So the question is, do we consent to the agenda? All those approved, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous, so that's approved. Thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I have one.
1 minute.
Okay,
So,
sure.
Jeff?
No, I was present at the last meeting, but not listed as present.
Word.
So if
Well-
we can add him.
Sorry, Jeff, you were definitely here.
Thank you. Well, you mentioned me in the minutes, so,
And that would be on line 9, or 8, line 8.
yeah.
Okay. Marsh?
I'll be good to raise my hand, right? So on lines 130 and 131, when I went back and listened to the CAT TV program, I realized I misunderstood what Tom had been saying, and so I proposed a replacement with, Mr. Haley asked how these items fit with the select board's mandate. Mr. Hudson Knapp explained that all but one came from the mandate. Mr. Haley suggested that the agenda items might be to have committees work on items instead of doing all this in the public meeting.
Is there any discussion on that?
We have to vote on the minutes.
So do we have to vote on the correction or just the minutes?
Minutes as amended.
Okay. So are there any further corrections to the minutes? If not, then can we vote on the minutes as
Well,
amended?
Does a motion have to be made second? That we
Yes.
accept?
Okay,
I'll
so
make a
we-
motion, we accept the minutes as
Okay.
adjusted.
So there's a motion that has been seconded to accept the minutes as amended. Any discussion? So to vote on the minutes as amended to be accepted, the motion is to vote on that and approve it.
Yep.
All those say yay?
Yay.
Yay?
Yay.
Aye, yes?
I like yay, that's more
Sorry.
fun.
Can you tell I'm nervous?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I like yay, I think that's a big improvement.
Okay. So if there are no further corrections, the minutes as amended are approved. Next, we have public comment. Is there anybody from the public who would like to come up and comment?
I just comment that it's nice to have members of the public here to encourage us and share in the discussion and help us on this process. So thank you for being here.
Bring your friends next time, and more people.
Right. So if there's no public comment, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the update from the Cparb Select Board meeting on November 14th, the response on clarification regarding Bennington Police Department. I went to the Select Board and asked them the intent of what they had written in the resolution as far as the Bennington Police Department. Our meetings are monthly, and the police chief or his designee will be present at all meetings and available to report as requested. And their intent was to have 2 avenues of support for us at the meetings. One was our select board liaison, and another was a representative of the Bennington Police Department. So that was the response from the select board. They had intended for them to be here for a resource for us, if we have questions, and then if there is something that we need clarification on, we can request that they come onto the agenda and report. Any questions?
Would we want them to, do they have anything they'd like to share with us? Is this a good time for them to share that? If there's anything the chief and lieutenant have to share? Or is that should it happen later?
It's not on the agenda.
Not on the agenda for this.
So they can't say anything?
With a good public comment.
Public comments, they can.
Okay.
All right. So next on the agenda is communication. We were supposed to have Jonas Spivak, but as we said earlier at the meeting, he's not here this month, but we will try to get him on to a future agenda. And then the second thing was the discussion of the creation of subcommittees. Can I get a motion to discuss the creation of committees?
Second.
So we have a motion by...
Was Jeff the second?
Yes.
A motion by Will, seconded by Jeff, to discuss the creation of committees, subcommittees. Is there any discussion?
Do we need a motion to have this discussion?
It's already made. Might as well let it go through.
All right.
Marsh?
I'm in favor. Oh, did we have to vote on that motion, or we're gonna?
Yes, you have to vote on the motion to have a discussion.
Okay, so can we vote on the motion to have a discussion on the creation of subcommittees?
Aye.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or yay.
Yay.
Yay, I like
Yay.
it.
Yay. All right. So does anyone have anything that they would like to discuss on committees, subcommittees? Marsh?
So, I had some ideas that I shared last time, and I really took Tom's comments to heart because I thought they were good ones. That whatever we're gonna do for setting up committees and work for tasks, that we do 2 things. We base all of our priorities on the goals that the select board gave us. And I spent a lot of time reading them because I wasn't really familiar with them until I've looked at them, but I'm really familiar with them now, I think. And that we try to focus on a few things and do them well, rather than trying to do many things at once. So I tried to find, in my mind, and this is just my ideas, and this is just a kickoff place, there seem to be 2 areas that the ideas, the goals that we were given by the select board fall in. One is collaborative community policing, and the other one is safety and equity. And under those 2 groupings, it seemed like it was good to have a very small number of short-term and/or long-term goals, so that these committees would have a place to start and then some things to look at down the line. And under safety and equity, the first short-term goal I'd like to suggest is to recommend a complaint and compliment process. And that connects with goal 3, which is to review anonymized data on complaints and compliments for the purpose of identifying problems, patterns, and positive actions. And the second short-term goal for that committee, if you like it, is to recommend a process for tracking compliment and complaint data to evaluate safety and equity. And that relates directly to goal 4, analysis of town-wide safety data within a focus on equity and areas of need. And a longer-term goal of comparing our data with the data from other communities and trends. Somehow or another, this got misprinted. Isn't that funny? I wonder if it's here.
So,
Yes? The longer goal is to compare our data with the data from other communities, which relates to goal 5, and to evaluate, explore, and recommend officer and board training. That seems like stuff that I had for the second committee. A nice plan. So, collaborative policing had 2 goals: to study collaborative policing and increase 2-way communication and teamwork with the community. Long-term goal work with police and others to create solutions to community concerns and problems, which is the heart of community policing. The second one was safety and equity, that deals with the compliment and complaint process and keeping track of it, comparing it to other communities and evaluating training. I'm sorry I misread that and misled you.
Okay, so you're,
I'd like to move that.
Well, maybe
I
we
think
could
there
have
should
a
be more
general
discussion.
discussion.
Oh, yeah,
first,
that's
more
good.
discussion
And not move
first.
anything, okay.
So I hear that you saying that you're looking for two possible subcommittees, collaborative community policing and safety and equity.
Right.
When you talked about the safety and equity, you mentioned the complaint and compliment
I
process.
made, yeah, that really came under the collaborative community. Well, let me look. No, that came under safety and equity.
Under the impression that there is a complaint and compliment process already in
It's
place.
an internal investigation process. There is no
There's a-
internal investigation process?
Well, I think there is a way, because I've seen it on their website, correct? That you
Oh,
can.
yes. There is? There
Yes,
is a way to
I believe
register a
that's
complaint.
true. I don't know for a fact. Can we ask them?
You
if
can.
that's-
We-
Is that accurate, that there's a way to leave comments and compliments or critiques on your,
Complaints and compliments may be filed through the website.
Yeah.
And the town's new website that will also continue.
okay,
We also have a way of tracking complaints and compliments. We just purchased software, which we've discussed at the training that we all presented to you.
okay, thank you.
So that committee might work with you all to get this, so we know what the process is and we're all on the same page. It might be a very easy process.
Robert?
I'd like to ask a question. Have you thought at all yet about how you will provide us with anonymized data on complaints and compliments?
Yeah, we're currently working on a policy and procedure that will allow that to happen.
Okay.
And it was given to an attorney for review, just so we don't violate anyone's privileges or rights. And as soon as we have more opportunity, we'll have that. My suggestion to this group would be to allow the lieutenant and I to come back at a future meeting on the agenda to show you what we currently have in place in case we missed that during the training, and so that you all are aware of that, so we're not recreating the wheel and spending a lot of time on something that we've already worked hard to accomplish.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Can I take my turn, or are we still talking about?
We're done. I'm done.
Oh, okay. Okay, so, I don't know how to fit into goals or what, but this is what I'd like to work on, and if we need a subcommittee for it, fine. So, I always go back to page 27 of the IACP report that has a survey, I'll call it of customer satisfaction with the Bennington Police Department, and also a sampling of anecdotal information about people feeling there are two Benningtons. Police department treats one Bennington better than it treats the other. People are afraid of retaliation, even if they make complaints, even if they request service. I would like to begin a program of reaching out to community stakeholders like UCS, United Counseling Service, Coalition for the Homeless, GBICS, these type of groups who service, I think probably most of the people who have more negative views of the police department, and talk to them, get input from them about their experiences with the police, and if possible, see if they can give us, say, an idea of their clients' experience with the police, so that we can do one, basically, of two things. Either valid, because the survey only had like 375 people, so I'm trying to expand it to see if this is actually a fluke, and if we could get more input and more data, we would find these percentages change to be more favorable to the police department. Or if we validate this data and find out that there is a situation here that maybe we could try to think of ways to improve. So that's what I want. I want to start initially reaching out to these community stakeholders, the people who run these organizations, again, UCS, PC, GBICS, those people, and just start talking to them and start getting more data and more input from them.
Yep, could I elaborate on that? I think in relation to the subcommittee, I think that kind of goes on par with what I was thinking about, and we don't have to make a motion on this quite yet, but considering community outreach and communications to be the first subcommittee that we establish. I don't know if that people want to discuss that or think that sounds like a good idea.
Be fine with me. Does anyone have any thoughts on this? Am I?
I had a question.
Seems like
So, I guess my initial reaction is that you thought maybe those people particularly were the ones that felt they were part of the one side. But I think if that's true or not, I don't know if it is.
Right.
But if you're only seeking out that one side, it wouldn't paint that to Bennington picture. It would confirm one. So I think you might also have to try to reach all people just to get the contrast. So then that would starkly show a difference if there is one, or maybe it's more equal than we thought. I don't know. So I think it's maybe assuming a certain outcome, where I think if we go in without any outcome in mind and then let the data speak for itself.
Right, because the outcome I'm pursuing is to either validate or invalidate this data. It may turn out that if we have a bigger sample, these numbers trend more favorably to the police department.
Yeah, and we might also find that those complaints or people that feel those certain ways are across the board.
Yes.
And so those are the things I'm curious about, that it just a kind of a fresh look at it without any preconceived outcome, and then see what it tells us. Yeah.
That would be great.
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay. Marsh?
And at least to me in that search, whether we get the conclusive decision of who gets more votes, whether it's more happy people or troubled people, the real point is to hear people. And that to me seems like opening these doors to get the communication going is really important. Because we want to work on the things that need work, and we also want to celebrate the things that are going right, because there's a lot of good stuff happening.
Oh, absolutely.
And we don't move forward if we pound each other into the ground. We want to be getting both sides.
Well,
So, I think all this discussion kind of leads back to what I just said about how we should have one or two, because I feel like people are putting clear distinctions between wanting to involve the community but also wanting to communicate to the community. I think it's kind of bringing in stuff but also putting stuff out there. So we could consider making those two different subcommittees. But that was just a thought. And I wanted to also add, I have the floor right now. I'd want to see if this subcommittee, or if we end up creating multiple, one of these subcommittees could be tasked with engaging public support for this board and civilian oversight boards in general, so that we can understand the authority and legitimacy we can lead with. And that's based off of some research I've been doing the past month, and I can give this to you, Marsh, to put on the record. But
Thank you.
In 2021, a national poll on the state level support for civilian oversight boards showed that Vermont ranked the second lowest of all states in the country in support for a civilian oversight board of this kind and its associated powers, which is approximately 48% of the general population. I realize we're talking about Bennington, which would go back to what you were saying, in that we have to go back to those numbers and samples to figure out if they actually are accurate and correct. And same with this poll. The only reason I'm going with it is because there's not a lot of statistical analysis on police research and literature that's been published in the 21st century, but this was one of the only polling information sites that had anything about police oversight board support in Vermont. And I'm trying to study this particular source, since it is one of the only ones out there, and the methodologies they use to conduct this polling, and the subsequent relevance it has to our board. But I think it would be important for us to consider this and engage in what we want to do with our goals and our missions put out by the select board.
I think we have to be very, very careful, because we are not an oversight board.
Right. Yeah,
So
but
you
there's-
have to be very careful.
Right.
We are a review board to look at policies, procedures, training, bridging gaps, hearing all voices. But-
And I'll apologize for my wording with that, because
Yeah.
the
No,
way.
we just need to be
Right, oh, yeah,
careful
no,
with
no, no,
that. That's
because the
all. We
way
need to
it
be
was
careful.
phrased were civilian review boards, CRBs, not COBs, which I would have, abbreviated that way, but, no, you're right, I use those terms interchangeably,
just-
which
yeah.
we need to clarify, thank you for that.
I don't know if it fits in to any of these others or if it would be a separate thing. But reaching out to the community is a huge part of, I think, what will help us understand a lot of things. But then also, I think the other part of it is the police department. And I don't know if it's an anonymous survey or better understanding what they feel are their challenges so that we get both sides of the story, and maybe there's some obvious things that when you have that easy, I don't want to say easy, but obvious common ground or areas that may be improved by understanding their challenges and the challenges on the other side so that we can better bridge that versus, it not at all saying community understanding is not important, because it is hugely important, but also getting the other side of it. And I don't know, some of it's about reviewing their policies and procedures and trainings, and I think that's all important, but also part of what I got from the ride-along is the individual stories and challenges that each person on the police department faces as well on a personal human level. To understand that as well would be a good thing. And I don't know if that's a separate subcommittee that works with the police to try to get a picture of that, or if it's incorporated into a different.
I think it's,
It's something we could probably put on the agenda for next month to discuss with Paul or Cam, whoever is going to come. We can discuss what they've put in place already, and also developing some kind of strategy to extract data from the police officers and his staff as well. So that might be, for now, just an agenda item
Yeah.
for a
To
future
be,
date.
yeah,
And then from
maybe that,
that meeting, from that agenda item, then we could look at the potential of creating a subcommittee.
yeah, I'm good with
that
that,
sounds,
yeah.
so does anyone else have anything before I kind of summarize what I think I'm getting? So I think.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I've heard the summary, basically 3 committees or subcommittees. One, collaborative community policing. Another one was safety and equity. And another one was communications and community outreach. And there seemed to be a lot of conversation around the community outreach portion. So I'm thinking like the communications and the community outreach might be a nice place to start. And, as far as I like the safety and equity committee. I like that, the equity is near and dear to me. And I think that that's something, although I think as far as looking at, and maybe I'm getting this mixed up from where your notes were mixed up, but, the complaint process, I think we need to wait and see what they bring to us.
I think
and
that's
that
very
before we start anything with that. And then as far as, what you had said about the collaborative community policing with the two-way communication, does that fall under community outreach? Or
Well,
is
community
that- is
outreach
that different?
follows under.
There's-
There's a lot of
The
this,
heart of
We're talking-
collaborative community policing is communication. And really developing, first of all, better communication like the BPD's been working at,
Right.
where they're out there telling their story more to the community. Second part is out there hearing the community so that officers and leaders have when they stop somebody or come up to somebody, they have an idea, boy, I know what I think I have a feel for what life is like for you, rather than, I'm here to hit you with a law and whack you. And not that officers are doing that, but that's the way police officers sometimes get set up.
So for right now, for starting to, would that fall under communications and community outreach? Instead of,
They could go either way. I think we're talking about similar things. The third step of collaborative community policing is to, for the police and a group like this, to be listening to the community and its problems and getting us all together to make plans for how do we address those problems. So the communication goes from one-way to two-way to then teaming up to how do we address the needs of our community and be a team so the whole town is participating in policing.
which is our goal.
That's our long-term goal.
So, okay.
So on the communication, should we bother creating a subcommittee on communications at this point before we involve Jonah? Find out what we can actually do for communications, what our capabilities would be through the town. It just seems like we might be putting the cart before the horse before we hear from Jonah on this matter.
Well, are we looking at doing a communications committee and a community outreach, or are we looking at doing communications and community outreach where it would fall?
I'd actually like to see them separate, because, I mean, they are different things. Like I say, what I have in mind for what I was talking about is really a desire to get input from the community, kind of based on this, the IACP survey.
So would you consider that communications, or would you consider that community outreach?
I'm calling that community outreach, though really I'm thinking more in terms of community survey. I mean, outreach is the easiest way I can think to sum it up. But that's what I would like a committee to be able to focus on. And I agree with Scott, I think we should wait and talk to Jonah to see if we can put together our communications plan, like we were talking about.
So we're talking basically about doing a community outreach committee this evening? Is that what I'm hearing a lot of the comments on?
That would be great.
Okay. Just, Marsh.
Is there, I like to get things going and not put things off. And I'm wondering if we had an outreach committee that we formed that then met with Jonah and worked with him, do we need to bring it through all of us first, or could we set them at work to report back to us in a month about what they find?
And you mean a communications committee?
Okay, whichever one we're talking about.
Yeah.
the
I
meeting with Jonah.
think that anything we do would go to Kelly, and then she would bring it up. I mean, Tom, you'd be better versed at speaking on this, but I believe the way any subcommittee would run is we would work together in our subcommittee, report to Kelly as our
Right.
chair, and then she would bring it to in the following meeting, if it was on the agenda, then we would go over things then.
That's what I was thinking, we could start that process
But-
and the committee meet with Jonah.
I would definitely like an opportunity to talk to Jonah too,
Yeah.
even if I'm not on this committee. I've got questions, a lot of questions for him, so I'd really like him to come talk to the whole group. Now, maybe as, you know, you get the committee and you start crafting things, it might make more sense to meet with Jonah, but I really would like to see him come to the whole group.
I don't think it's either or.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So is the feeling that we want to hold off on the communications committee? Is that what, or, okay, we're just going to go with, we're looking right now at just community outreach.
Outreach.
That's the only one we want to start and work on this evening.
Okay. Great.
Which you need Jonah for too.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Not Jonah.
I know how to make phone calls and invite people to meetings.
Well, we'll definitely be in touch with Jonah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we proposing an outreach committee, or are we not
So
proposing?
do we have,
Yeah, I'll make a motion
So
to create the subcommittee on community outreach.
can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Will, seconded by Robert, to create a community outreach subcommittee. Can I have
A discussion.
discussion?
Subcommittees, how many, is there a minimum or a maximum number of?
The board is 6, you can have no more than 3,
3 on,
otherwise you're a quorum.
right.
Right?
So wait,
Who else?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
I was just asking, what is the minimum and maximum number of people on subcommittees?
Okay, I thought you
in
were
general?
asking for how many subcommittees or
Nope,
committees
nope.
we could
How many
have.
participants, how many people
Okay.
from,
Well,
Three.
minimum would technically be one.
One
Because
person.
if you have none, then it's not a committee.
Not gonna
sure,
do a
so
whole-
one, 2, or 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to Will's thing, remove the word, the thing sub.
Right.
Because a subcommittee means below a committee, and we don't have any committees.
These are committees.
So
Right.
could we just make a committee on
Correct.
Yeah.
Community outreach.
community outreach?
So we have an amended motion
To
on the
create-
floor to create a committee for community outreach.
Correct.
Okay. Can I get a second? I have to have a second,
Well,
okay.
whatever.
All right, any discussion on that?
I would recommend that you also decide who you would want to be on that. You can color it all one vote.
Oh, we don't
Oh,
have to
okay.
create the committee first? Okay. Well, I'd
Okay.
like to be on it.
Yeah, I'll be on it as well.
Give me one moment, Robert and Will. Okay, Jack, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna,
Jack, would you mind
Can you
coming
come up here?
here?
I'm sorry.
where should I stand so you can get my good side? Here?
Sure.
Okay, I was just gonna
Can you
encourage,
just name and tell
yeah,
us?
I'm Jack Rossiter Munley from here in Bennington. I was gonna encourage the board that for this committee and for any subcommittees, I hope that you'll craft a charge, a specific charge for that committee and subcommittee. I don't know if that's something that's coming, but just in the discussion so far, it hadn't come up, so I just wanted to encourage that. I don't know if it can happen tonight, but it's something that I think will help. Marcia alluded to his suggested subcommittees being aligned with the specific goals from the select board charge and goals for this group, and so I hope that you'll do the same for any subcommittees that come forward.
Great. Perhaps the first thing
Thank
this
you.
committee could do is get together and come up with a charge and bring that to
To the next
the
meeting.
next meeting.
Marsh?
And following Tom's suggestion, maybe that charge could relate back to our goals, so that specifically it identifies the goals that we're aiming for and how they connect with that charge.
You can do that.
So, any other discussion?
I was just gonna make a comment that anything that we do should point back to the specific goals that we were created for.
Right.
We shouldn't just be flying off and creating a bunch of committees and subcommittees and doing things that we want to do. We've been charged with a specific task, we've got goals set, and anything that we do, we should really take into consideration the goal, and then come up with a means to reach that goal.
Great.
I think that's very important, and one of the women reminded us, our last meeting, that, you know, we're a community review board, and we have to keep that in mind as well. We are a review board.
Advisory and review.
Advisory review board for the community. We have specific goals set, so anything we do really has to point to those goals.
Jeff?
I had some general questions on committees or subcommittees.
Well, wait, do we need to finish? We've got a motion on the
Okay.
floor for this.
Well, yeah. I
Is
mean,
it part
kinda
of
ties-
this? It's still the-
It can be separate. Yeah, made me think about it, but I'll do it separately.
Okay.
Now, before we finish that motion, has everyone decided who wants to be on it or wants to put forth their name? I don't know if we wrote down a position.
So we had Robert,
Yeah,
Then we'll,
yeah, I said I would.
and Will.
Anyone else?
I'd be happy to participate in that.
Um,
What do you think?
So, well, if the three of you do that and then you communicate with me, that's over quorum. So that violates the open meeting law.
That
So
was
one
my
of you has to
question.
take a step back because I am not going to let this committee go.
Okay,
So,
okay, good. I don't mind, I don't need to do it.
Robert, we're good? Robert?
I don't think I
Will, and
understood your last comment, though. The three of us are on the committee.
So the three of you volunteered for the committee,
Yeah,
but if you bring the information to me, that means there's 4 people within our committee that does it, which breaks the quorum, which breaks the open meeting law.
wouldn't we just bring the information to the meeting? And it would be on the agenda that we would have a report to make, or that we would be pursuing action?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be on this committee,
Okay, well, that's,
being chair, so just, it's our first one, I think it's important. I can always recuse myself later and put somebody else on, but Robert,
Okay,
Will, and I.
all right.
Okay,
right.
all right. So, any other discussion before?
Yeah, I do have another question. This might be general, I don't know. So are we allowed to communicate, the three of us, with
That
our
was my
town
question.
emails?
Yeah, what are the
about-
rules?
Three of you can.
Three can?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we can conduct business via email for the committee.
But it can never
we
include
can't.
anyone
It
else.
can't
Tell
include anyone
anybody
else,
else.
other
Okay.
than Tom, because Tom
Other
does
than
not
Tom.
vote.
Right,
Yeah, I'm not actually on the committee.
right, right. Okay, great.
Okay.
And then I guess since you asked that, so that was, how do they handle communication? So as long as it's that,
Yeah.
and then how often can they just figure that out on their own outside and meet as often or as infrequently as they would like?
Right.
And then report back at the monthly meeting.
As long as you get the job done.
Yep,
Yeah.
all right.
So another issue that I was talking to Jeannie Jenkins, who's the chair of the select board, about with committees, is whether committees could talk with and draw upon people in the community. So for example, like we just talked earlier about talking with Jonah about communications issues. And so she was saying the committee could talk with a community member or community members about things they're researching to learn from them. So that even though you can't talk to me, I happen to be a community member, but you can't talk to other community members who are not on the committee. So
Okay.
that could be handy when you're trying to draw on other resources.
Absolutely.
Question? That means I'm calling for a vote.
Okay, all right. So no one else has any comments? All right, so we have a motion and a vote on the floor to create a community outreach committee that will come back next month with their charge.
And the members are?
And the members are Kelly, Robert, and Will. Okay. All those in favor of creating the community outreach committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Yay.
Okay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, so moved. The next item of business is the discussion of the upcoming agenda items.
So that, the community outreach, or
Will be
would
on
it just
there,
be
right.
general report of committees and subcommittees? Could you make it that general?
Yeah, report of committees?
Yeah,
You could make that a standing item if you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
Report of committees?
I make a motion, we make that a standing item.
Now, should we include on the agenda that, well, you know, this committee is gonna,
Talk about
say
it.
something because people might want to
Mm.
hear it?
So we have a motion on the floor to make reports a standing item on the agenda.
Committee reports.
Committee standing reports,
Sorry.
I can't talk.
Easy for you to
Committee
say.
reports a standing item on the agenda.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Jeff and Scott, they already made second.
So when we do that, when the minutes or the agenda comes out, can we go into more detail that will be, like you said, if you want to specifically highlight that reported committees will be discussing community outreach, whatever, can you add that level of detail in there? Yeah, okay.
Your
so-
chair has such discretion.
Okay, all right, good.
Marcia?
So I'd like to suggest that we put in a standing agenda item to hear from the police department and their,
Do we
things
have
they'd
to
like us
vote
to
on
know.
this one first?
Oh, we have to vote on this,
this.
right.
Yeah.
Cancel that. I didn't say that.
So we have a motion that has been seconded to add reports as a, committee reports as a standing item on the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Yay.
Yay. All those opposed say nay. So carried.
Now I'd like to make a motion that
Okay.
we can make another standing item, and that's input from the police department, things they'd like us to know, or things we'd like to talk with them about for sharing signals.
As a standing item. Okay.
And I'd like to suggest that we consider that early in the agenda process so that we don't keep them here longer than they need to, particularly if they have things that they've got to do.
Well, they're here to respond to our inquiries as
Right.
opposed to.
Do we have a second before we do this?
I'll second it.
Okay.
As opposed to coming and giving us
Yeah, what I was
reports.
proposing was
I'm
both.
really leery about having too much of a police presence in our regular meetings. If we want to ask them questions, I'm sure they're going to be more than happy to answer us and to help us. But I don't know why we would make them come every meeting and make some report about something. Let them respond to our requests. They're going to be sitting here.
So they don't have to speak if they don't
No.
want to?
And to invite is what I said.
Yeah, and
To share
then also,
about-
they could speak if they wanted to during the public
Well, anyone
comment
can do that, right?
section.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it, by just making that clear that that would happen, so if people were interested in hearing what they have to say, it would be clearer, and I think give visibility to what might happen versus if we don't put it on the agenda and they can speak anyway. I don't know that it, not leaving it off doesn't change it anything other than it doesn't really make it clear that they may be speaking. I don't know.
They're a resource for us. They're not
Yeah.
here to speak. They're not here to give us reports. They're here to answer our questions. It's my understanding of the clarification from the select board.
But if they're not on the agenda, we can't ask them any questions.
Yes, we can.
I mean, we can, but we
Okay,
can't.
wait, one at a time,
I
please.
think it just becomes muddied. Like, if we want specific information from them and they're not on the agenda, how do we make that part of our agenda? But if they're on the agenda as a standing item, that we're gonna have, this much time with the police department, where we can ask them questions, we can ask them for data, they can provide us with data that perhaps we were discussing this meeting.
And they may come with something that we weren't aware of. So I guess that would be my idea is, when you said that they may come and say, hey, we have this new report that came out and we'd like to talk about it. And if they're not on the agenda, how do we have that open two-way communication?
Because we could put that on the agenda.
If we didn't
they
know it
contacted
Okay,
us.
one at a
If they
time, please.
contacted us and said, we have something here we want to share with the board, then we put it on the agenda.
Okay.
So, Tom, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I would just, I don't think you should put it as a standing agenda item. Simply because, first of all, it's not specific enough. You can't just say, come report to us. They would need to know what to report about. And, making a report takes time and preparation, so we haven't even chatted with the chief about that yet. So I would just, they are gonna be here. If you want information from them, they're gonna be able to give it to you.
Yeah.
And like he said, if there is something they want you to be aware about, they can always contact Kelly, say, hey, I wanna get on the agenda.
As needed.
And I'm sure, as needed, and I'm sure
Okay.
she would be open to that.
And when I did speak with the select board the other night at the meeting, they had said that it was their intent that BPD was here at every meeting, but was not on the agenda every month, was not a standing item, was not, of course, it's our meeting, it's our agenda, we can do what we choose with that, but, like Tom said, it does take time to prepare stuff. If there is something that they want communicated, they can just let us know, we'll get it on the agenda, and there is the public comment, but they're welcome, you know, and they will be at the meetings.
Okay. Yeah.
So, any other, Marsh?
So I'd still like to say why I made this motion, because I think part of collaborative community policing is really good communication with the police. And I think we can have that either way. But I think there are two things that were important to me. One is that we, by putting when they're going to talk early on the agenda, it frees them to go do policing when they're done talking and we're done asking them questions. And the second thing is, I really think it's important that we hear regularly from them so that we know what are the challenges. You know, we've talked, for example, with the police department about the challenges of numbers and recruiting. There are lots of issues, you know, the growing frequency of violence in the community. What I was proposing was just inviting them to share with us rather than to present a 10-page, you know, public talk. But to share with us.
Let me, that is an
But you're
extreme
interrupting me,
thing.
so
Yes.
Wait,
would you
one
let
at
me
a time,
finish
please.
before you talk?
Please, thank
I
you.
will.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So maybe I've said my piece, it's just, I guess that's it.
So let me say, I don't like the comparison being they either come and just talk to us or they submit a 10-page report. That was kind of an extreme example on the other side. I think anytime we have questions for them, we'll ask them. They're here, they're right here. Anytime something comes along, they think this board, we think they should know it, they can get on the agenda. They're more than welcome to get on the agenda and come share anything with us that they would like.
Okay, Tom?
I also think Kelly and Will, when they're putting the agenda together, could be mindful of putting things that we would probably need input from the police representative up toward the top of the agenda.
Yeah.
And there may be evenings where it might not look like we're gonna need them at all, and she could just tell them they can go. Like, that's my thought.
Can we do that?
Yep.
Well,
Jeff?
I just, at the select board meeting the other night, it was that they, you know, I think they kind of compared it to them having the town manager there. So if any questions did come up, so if, I guess depending on what the night looked like and everything else was clearly not related to the police department, but if there's the possibility of needing to ask questions, I would think they'd have to be here
Right.
for the entire meeting, not just
Right.
a certain part, unless, you know, and I think that was talked about, if there's times where we may want to have different discussions or things like that, then, okay, you guys are free to leave if you so choose, but other than that, I think they would typically be here the whole time.
They are also citizens of Bennington, and
Right.
they can come.
Oh, sure,
Welcome to come.
sure,
if they
sure.
want to,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
at their pleasure.
Right.
Well, the point that I was kind of go back to is, we talk about the communities within the community, and they are part of the community. They are a community, the Brotherhood of the Police, they have their own community, but they are part of our community. We have it with the fire department, you know, the fire department community, but we are all part of the same community. And we are, that's the first word, community. That's all.
So. Any other discussion? So we have a motion to add BPDs to the agenda as a standing item going forward. Can we get a vote on that? If those in favor say aye.
Aye?
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Those abstained?
I'm actually going to vote nay as well.
So the motion is not carried. Any other items for agenda upcoming?
So the vote I have is 2 no, 1 yes, 3 abstained.
3 noes. Will,
No.
Robert and I were no.
Oh, you and I
You
didn't
were
hear.
yes.
Okay,
Jeff and Scott abstained.
okay. Thank you.
So agenda item for next month. I hope that our community outreach committee will be able to invite representatives of some organization to come spend some time with us next month. but we have to, call someone and see if they'll come. We can do that.
So we have a motion to discuss this?
A motion to discuss.
Do we
Add
need
this to our
it's
agenda.
for agenda items?
Yeah, okay, a motion to add an item to next month's agenda pertaining to inviting a representative community stakeholder to come to our meeting for a discussion, just a discussion. That's what I'm hoping we're gonna be able to do, is invite people, groups, to come talk to us, to come talk to the board. We can all ask questions, and that's what I'm hoping.
I'm just wondering if that's a little bit premature. We just formed the committee, we haven't agreed on our charge yet.
Okay.
I'm thinking it might be a little bit premature to say to an organization, hey, can you come and talk with us? We don't really have something specific we're gonna ask you to talk to us about, but we want you to come in and talk to us. And I think their time is valuable as well. And I think that we kind of owe it to them maybe to have a committee meeting and figure out what we want and who we want and what we want them to come and talk about.
Okay, great.
Before just putting it on an agenda, but it's discussion time, so.
Draw the motion. Did I make a motion?
You did.
You made a motion.
Actually, just we should have a second before we discuss.
Yeah, right, true, very true, very true. Okay.
So, any other upcoming agenda items?
Are we going to try to get Jonah here again next month?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just when we're giving these agenda items, we've had motions. Do we need to vote on agenda items, or can we simply propose them to the chair?
Yeah, the chair, just.
Okay.
I do have a question about the
The only
agenda.
one we have is, the motion for next month is Jonah. What's on there?
And that the Community Outreach Committee will present the
Set the
board
charge.
with its
Yeah,
charge.
and we voted on that before.
On the agenda, I'm sorry, I didn't think of this before, the item at 7:25, motion to convene, should that be motion to adjourn?
There's one of that after.
What does
I know.
convene mean?
Does that mean set the next
I think
meeting?
that was a mistake on my
Oh,
part when I
okay.
was designing it and drafted it. I apologize for that. I circled it in red because I was like, that was not
Saved
supposed
us
to be
5
done.
minutes, thanks.
Yeah.
That's right.
Take a motion that we strike that from the.
So do we have a motion to amend the minutes to change the word convene?
It's the
I don't think we
agenda.
can't
I don't know that
vote
it's that
on it.
I
necessary.
think it was just a typo.
Okay, all right.
So when is our next meeting?
December.
Do we have a?
You made that
to-
motion.
To
The
do,
third Thursday of December.
Thursday of
15th.
well, I'm asking what the date is.
Do we have a
December
motion
15th.
I
to
don't have a
adjourn?
calendar ready.
Do we want to, I think we should give a chance, are we really talking about a different date for next month? Or-
It's December 15th.
Yeah, so we're all set,
That's a
right?
third Thursday. Great.
So,
I make a motion, we adjourn.
okay, can I get a second? Any discussion? The motion on the floor is to adjourn. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right?
Those opposed, say nay.
All right.
Okay. The next meeting is Thursday, December 15th at 6 PM in the multipurpose room in the fire department house. Thank you all for
Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.